Well, that was the last time I ever had high expectations for another Mario sports title. Hey everyone! I'm Albert Boris. And oh goody, would you look at that? We just got a new Mario Tennis game for the Switch 2 today, after 8 long years. Personally, I was reasonably excited for it, back when it was first shown in September. I really enjoyed the Mario Tennis Aces on the first Switch despite its immense lack of content, and while on one hand I was a little disappointed to realize we were already back with another tennis game so soon, it truthfully doesn't feel like it's been that long. Never mind that other Mario sports series are in bigger need of new installments. However, on the bright side, it also actually looked quite good for the usual standards of these games, since it actually seemed to have a lot more content, including a more developed adventure mode campaign. Or well, okay, the price seemed absolutely outrageous, but it's also not like it was going to be a surprise either. And well, after playing the game for around 10 hours now and experiencing just about everything the game has to offer, I mean, I suppose it's good-ish, but also nowhere near the step up in quality I thought it would be. It certainly has its big strengths. The gameplay loop alone is probably going to be the biggest contributing factor to me coming back to this game. The controls are perfectly smooth and responsive, and the new Fever Racket gimmick is one of the best additions we could have gotten to spice up the matches. Seriously, the idea of having like, what, 30 different tennis rackets, each with their own designated effect you can activate to cause mayhem on the other player's side, not only adds so much potential variety to each match, but as if it wasn't crazy enough, if you're not careful, the other player can also rally back your Fever shot before it bounces, potentially screwing you over instead if you're not quick to hit it back. So it's not an automatic easy mode card, and I love the tension of doing all you can to not be the one to get cursed. That said, the Inky Racket. Jesus, what is Nintendo's obsession with splatting goop all over my screen? And it's even worse this time because no matter what, you can't even avoid it, even if you rally the shot back in time. It's just ruining it for everybody. Whatever. Now, on the one hand, I do feel like Fever shots are maybe a little too accessible to the player, since you don't really have to do anything to refill its meter, it just sorta happens automatically and fairly quickly. Although on another hand, considering the risky nature of Fever shots, I suppose it's a fair trade-off to make it easy to activate. I still wish you had to work to refill it though by say maybe charging up shots, and on the whole I do think the core movement is definitely not as flexible as in Aces the previous game, with its zone speed and zone tricks that allowed you to easily move around the court quickly, but considering everything else, I can do without it I suppose. Oh yeah, and also the talking flower from Wonder commentates each match. That's cute, however I definitely preferred it when they were more of just an occasional NPC that only showed up every once in a while. They do get kind of annoying when they talk so often over the action. Perhaps the most pleasant surprise though, at least for me, was discovering the fact that oh my god, this game has proper unlockables! I mean okay, they're pretty shallow, most of them are just earned by continuously playing more and more matches, but there are a few characters and skins and rackets that you earn by actually beating stuff. It's not much, but considering the previous sports games had virtually no unlockables, heck most Mario spin-offs in general actually, it's certainly acceptable for where it's at and gives the game more of an overarching reason to come back and play more. And I mean, considering there aren't too many modes, I suppose some stuff not requiring you to win anything to earn them is at least a good compromise considering how many characters there are. Oh yeah, and the roster itself? Absolutely kingly. Not only does almost everyone from Aces return, including Chain Chomp, but there's plenty of obscure newcomers as well, like Wiggler, Baby Wario, and even for the first time ever, Baby Waluigi. Okay, normally I hate the baby characters, I think they're lazy clone slots that could have gone to something else, but these guys just look so stupid I can't help but find them adorable, especially when they try to act like adults. I also remember the days when Baby Waluigi was a big fan character, so it's cool to see him official on that front. That said, how are the many modes of Mario Tennis Fever themselves though? They're fine. I mean, there's certainly way more than in past tennis games, but also those games had like nothing, so the bar isn't exactly high. Of course, there's free play as always, swing mode with incomprehensible motion controls, online multiplayer, let's see how long that lasts before the lobbies die out as always. However, brand new to the game are also the trial towers, which sees you venturing through 10 floors for 3 different towers, each with their own dedicated tennis related challenges. It's fun for about an hour while you're still playing them for the first time, however I'm also not exactly seeing much of an incentive to ever go back to them after this. They are not particularly hard at all, if anything they feel more like just over-glorified tutorials for you to learn about different types of matches or Fever Rackets. Which is fine-ish, but it feels like a huge wasted opportunity to not have like an endless tower mode, where you play until you run out of hearts. That would have made for great replay value with high scores. The idea was right there. If it is of any consolation, at least they have multiplayer support, so you can try out these towers with friends, but at the same time, I'd probably rather just play any regular match in that case. And this is also pretty much exactly how I feel about the Tournament Cups mode as well. They're very much one and done in the same vein as Tower Trials is, however, at least with these, they at least take a little longer to get through, due to exponentially getting much harder as they go on, so at least they feel a little more rewarding to beat. There's also a bunch of extras minigames, all collectively referred to as the Mix It Up mode, which basically see you playing tennis with unique rule sets and features not normally seen otherwise. They're grouped into two separate categories, the score challenges as well as the special matches, and the score challenges are, well, they're riveting enough. In part due to the fact that they actually have a high score system to incentivize you to return to them. Admittedly, I've never been too big on ring shot, even in older games, however, I realize it's also more of just a personal preference, and I absolutely still support its inclusion, and for what it's worth, I really enjoyed auto tennis at least, where you had to hit panels to gain points and avoid the blank ones. Piranha Plant Challenge sucks though. It was boring in Aces, and I don't understand why they thought it was good enough to bring back here. Seriously, it's not hard, it's just slow and boring and predictable. Especially once you also realize how to decipher when a fever shot is coming. Could we not have gotten the rally challenges or the panel challenges from Aces instead? Actually, why couldn't we just have gotten all of them? I'm sure they had a time. However, the special matches are probably what perplexes me the most, why they're grouped with the extras mode. Because truthfully, there's not exactly much that's special about them. It's literally just normal quick play tennis matches, except get this, the courts have gimmicks. I'm sorry, why wasn't this just a touchable option for free play? I mean, I get why the courts don't normally have gimmicks. I suppose the developers thought the fever rackets would spice them up enough to the point that it would get too overwhelming otherwise, but what if I don't want to play with them and just want to play with court mechanics? Am I really gonna have to be forced to go to extras and only play tiebreakers to get that? And this is especially a bummer because I do quite like them, especially the Wonder-themed one. But I also want to play it for more than just 7 points. And keep in mind, it's also just 4 courts that get this gimmick treatment. The other ones are always empty. So, yeah. I feel like it's especially insulting when you consider that one of these unique special match gimmicks is just that Piranha Plants sometimes show up and spit your ball back at you. Because this was literally just the default gimmick for a normal court in Aces. Like, I'm sorry, but when I hear special matches, I'm thinking more like that Super Mario Bros. Chick from Mario Tennis Open, not just normal matches with gimmicks. At the end of the day, most of these other modes just sort of feel like pointless endeavors to fluff out the game. None of it is outright unfun, but very little of it also has much value to really bring me back in the long run. And ironically enough, free play is probably gonna be where I come back to the most, just to experience all of the different racket effects with friends. Which, on one hand, I do commend free play for being the best it's ever been. I know what they won't return to at all though is the adventure mode. Seriously, what an absolute travesty, considering it was not only painted up as one of the game's main selling points, but also the fact that the one in Aces was quite solid actually. I think the premise of it is at least kind of amusing. Daisy's having a deadly Mario Tennis fever, so Mario and his friends go to this mysterious island to look for a cure, and then they suddenly get turned into babies and have to relearn all of their tennis skills. That's so stupid it loops back to being funny, especially when the baby characters are arguing with each other. However, then you actually get to play it though, and it just never seems to get going. The first 1 to 2 hours of it is literally just an overextended tutorial to teach you about the very basics of Mario Tennis gameplay. You do some bullshit short minigame, then train with Toad, a piss easy trivia quiz, sometimes an official match, and then rinse and repeat. It is so monotonous, just doing these same things over and over again. You don't even get to use fever shots until like the very end of it, so for the most part, it's just basic tennis. Why do I need a separate lesson where all I do is just make one type of shot 7 times? Why is it so drawn out? Tennis Aces squeezed its tutorials into just the length of 1 level. Why couldn't they do the same here? Heck, as soon as you start this game for the first time, you already got a tutorial back then, which makes this even less justified, other than to camp on the point that they're babies. The rest of adventure mode is fine, however it's also not exactly the deepest thing in the world either. You get some nifty missions making use of the tennis mechanics, a few easy but harmless boss battles, and even a few smaller levels to traverse, however it's also all very bare bones, and despite the somewhat adventurous tone of it, the atmosphere is pretty much non-existent. All of the music is just the same breed of generic sportsy jazz with completely unmemorable melodies, including the boss theme, and to top it off, there's just no stakes at all. The final boss is piss easy, and once you're all done with it, it all pretty much just ends there and then after a conversation. I know I shouldn't expect much from a Mario Tennis story, but like, dude, surely the bar doesn't need to be in hell, does it? If it weren't for the overbloated tutorial, I'd maybe feel neutral about it in the end. Heck, maybe this would even be something fun to replay every once in a while, but yeah, this was a pretty big miss for me, in a game that's otherwise completely harmless. And all of this on top of the fact that this game is also $70. Look, I know this is a bit of an oversaturated debate, but it still bears mentioning the sheer hubris on display here. I would rather spend the $80 on Mario Kart World. I get more out of its straight line intermission tracks than I do from 70% of this game's modes. In what world does Mario Tennis Fever carry the same longevity and depth as Donkey Kong Bonanza, Kirby Air Riders, or Hyrule Warriors? I didn't even like the new Hyrule Warriors that much, but at least it had the content and effort put into it that I could see it being 70. By comparison, this is very clearly a budget title to all of them. From the way several of its cutscenes are just still images, certain animations are just ripped from previous games, or even just how stiff some characters look. Seriously, what is this? And for the record, I don't even think it's that much of a problem that it's unpolished in some areas like this. But don't tell me this was costly enough to warrant $70 out of my pocket, when by all means, I'm sure this game could have run perfectly fine even on the Wii U. At best, this is like a $40 title. Does this ultimately matter when judging the game as it is itself? No, it doesn't, and in the future, when used copies become common staple, it's inevitably gonna go for more inexpensive prices either way too. However, now in the present day, it's absolutely not worth it, and while the game is good enough, I cannot recommend it at all in its current state. I'll probably return to it every once in a while, just because the core gameplay is super good, and while there are things that Tennis Aces does better, mostly in the far more bearable story mode and more dramatic plot, better soundtrack, and fun movement options, at the end of the day, yeah, this is probably slightly better. At the same time, it's also very much just a 7 out of 10 though, and I definitely call it one of the weaker Switch 2 releases so far. But anyways, that's enough of my thoughts on this game so far. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe to my channel if you want to hear me yap about even more Mario things, and let me know in the comment section down below what your thoughts are on the game so far. And so with all that being said, I'm signing off now. Until next time.